Okay, talking about earthquakes. Wow. Just to start out with, let's see, Alaska. Just let me get my notes here. This just reported today, in fact, earlier today. Mexico, Alaska, and Japan, with the largest being a 5.8 in the state of Guerrero in Mexico. And so Alaska, Japan, and Mexico all reporting earthquakes in just today. So what's going on? Are these man-made? Are they natural? Well, the Earth has been active for quite a long time. It would not be anywhere near as active if it had not been for the earth-shattering event of, I will just put it within the last 10,000 years, when a large comet came through the solar system and ravaged Earth. It also ravaged some of the other planets, including Mars. Mars had a great deal of devastation from this passing comet, and it's very clearly reported in the history, in the texts, the ancient texts. So at any rate, the Earth's crust, mantle, is very active with earthquakes, volcanoes, etc. And these are constantly shifting. When one earthquake occurs, many times it moves plates and moves plate boundaries to the point where other earthquakes are triggered because one triggers another. So you can see right there that earthquakes are not simply localized events. They are very global events, in a sense. They're very one area of the Earth very much affects the other. And so this would lead one to believe that if one could do some trigger mechanisms, so let's analyze, say, an earthquake in Mexico. Let's take an earthquake in Mexico. It goes off, or is one in Japan. Okay, it goes off, and then hours, possibly within the next day, this shifts the plates in around let's say, the Aleutian Islands of Alaska, or south of Anchorage, where the earthquake was today, that there is enough juggling and moving, enough after effect to initiate an earthquake someplace else, thousands of miles away. Well, clearly, the effect thousands of miles away of a given earthquake would be very small. So what we're looking at are very small but well-placed triggering mechanisms to cause earthquakes. Now, it wouldn't take man long, given his devious nature and warlike nature, to figure out how to cause earthquakes, man-made earthquakes, because all you have to do is find one of those small triggering events and reproduce that in some manner to cause an earthquake. So one of the big questions now, for example, I've talked about the Japanese earthquakes being man-made. Why would I think that? Well, to have 51 major 6.0 or above earthquakes in exactly the same location on a given day is just, beyond probability. You look at the other major earthquakes around the Earth, and sure, you get aftershocks, but you don't get 51 of them, all of 6.0 and above. Because what happens is when the first major earthquake occurs, like in Japan, pushing 9.0 on the revised Richter scale, remember that would be like a 10.0 on the old Richter scale, and that's always very strange too. Why would somebody adjust the Richter scale, the measurement tool that we have to measure earthquakes? Why would somebody adjust that? If we're having bigger earthquakes, what's the big deal? But as we head into possibly an era with man-made earthquakes that are much bigger, it kind of takes kind of like the pennies or Sears-Roebuck philosophy of saying 1995 or 99.95. It just doesn't seem like $100. That 99 just makes you think 90 less than 100. But it's just a little more politically palatable, you might say. And so it's the same way with earthquakes. If they can give you a factor of 10 reduction in the earthquake, what would you call it, the name or the label that you put on it, when it's really 10 times bigger, that would make people think, well, gee, that was just a 7, or a 6 or an 8 or whatever, when really it was much bigger. Okay, so the point is, what kind of triggering mechanisms are out there to induce earthquakes? And right now, the United States, I would say, if somebody were to pull a natural event, or a so-called the illusion of a natural event in the United States, I would put it in there's been so much emphasis on the New Madrid fault line that people are ready for it. The Homeland Security had a number of drills that they went through to get people ready for this. So people are mentally primed so that if it happens, they can go, oh, doggone, we predicted that earthquake, and isn't that something? It happened. So what I'm saying is that what I want to do is preempt this possibility of man-made earthquakes in the New Madrid around St. Louis, Missouri. I want to preempt this with the discussion of how earthquakes are made by man. What can they do? And I'm going to give 3 major examples. And of course, everybody has heard of the term HAARP. The technique that I talk about that really doesn't get much attention, unfortunately, and for good reason, is because it's the newest, best method of dealing with earthquakes, and that is satellite laser pulsing. It's the tool of choice for creating hurricanes and foul weather. And so, for example, when all of the bad weather rolled through the southwestern or the southeastern United States in past weeks, that was my guess that these were man-made, satellite-assisted. When the 4 hurricanes cruised through southern Florida a number of years ago, satellite laser-assisted. When Hurricane Katrina marched up from the south, once again, satellite laser-assisted. And if you look at, say, a year ago or so, the 5 hurricanes that marched through Cuba, satellite laser-assisted, basically a military assault on the island of Cuba. So at any rate, satellite lasers can also be used to induce earthquakes. The third method I will talk about is deep drilling nuclear tactical bombs set off underground. These could be drilled and placed years in advance and be ready to go at the push of a button. So, for example, the 51 earthquakes in Japan, those could have been placed there by the U.S. Navy, who knows, a long time ago, or recently, who knows? It's hard to say. The equipment that is available for this type of activity, the average person on the street just doesn't happen to have handy. This is something that's very specialized. It takes very specialized tools. And in a lot of cases, remember that one might say, well, gee, how could you have all these guys on submarines and they wouldn't know what's going on? You have to remember that in the military, everything is compartmentalized. People simply don't have access to information. And this brings up a simple point that I wanted to make this past week. And I was going to make the point. What does the killing or the alleged killing of Osama bin Laden and NASA going to the moon, what do those 2 events have in common? Well, they have something very major in common in the scientific sense. They both lack third independent party verification. Now, it would be like the hometown team with the hometown newspaper going off and saying that they played a football game. The hometown team plays a football game and they come back with a glorious win. But nobody went to the game and nobody saw it, and the newspaper reports it, but there was no third-party independent verification of any type. So the question is raised, well, how do we know that the hometown team won, or that they even played the game? Oh, how could you question that? That's the hometown team. Well, it's the same situation. There was no third-party independent verification of any kind with the alleged killing of Osama bin Laden, as the same with NASA claiming that it went to the moon. I remember when NASA was, just a quick aside, NASA was supposed to have a satellite that orbited the moon, and that was going to be the final. They were going to have pictures, close-up pictures of all the moon landings, and show those Apollo craft there, and the footprints of the astronauts that should still be there. But wait a minute. Nothing ever appeared after all of the fanfare. They showed some pictures with like a 4-pixel smudge in what appeared to be a pencil line kind of scribbled around where the astronauts supposedly walked, and they go, there it is, there's proof. And I'm going, wait a minute. This is supposed to be low altitude, high resolution pictures of the moon. Satellites orbiting Earth can take a picture, and you can go on Google Earth and you can see the house number on your house from just standard satellite photos. You can see the car in your driveway. You can see the boat in your backyard. You can see all kinds of details on Google Earth. Do you think the military has something better than that? Well, I hope so. Do you think that with no atmosphere around the moon and the best photography equipment available to man, supposedly being sent up in recent years by NASA, that the best thing they can produce is a little 4-pixel smudge on a picture and a couple pencil scribble lines on a picture and say that's it? Well, what's the problem? Well, it wouldn't match all of the scenery around the moon landing, wouldn't match all the rocks and all of the other structure that you would see in the alleged moon pictures, which are all over the place, which are available supposedly all over the internet, and people have them stored, etc., etc. So how could NASA release pictures of this, high-resolution photography of the moon and the lunar landing sites when none of it would correspond? Well, absolutely it would be ridiculous, so they didn't release anything. But once again, it begs the point. There was no third-party verification. And so once again, when you come to people with equipment that was purchased for defense purposes, and they're using it for malicious purposes against populations, how is anybody going to know? All you can do is look at the side effects. All you can do is look at what would be the obvious side effects. So, okay, let's talk about HAARP, then I'll talk about satellite laser, and then I'll talk about deep drilling nuclear tactical bombs to set off naturally appearing but man-made earthquakes. Okay, talking about HAARP, here is basically what HAARP is. It is a radio transmitter, and it has the ability to send beams of energy around the world, and it can reflect like a radio signal. My shortwave radio signal is heard around the world because it basically bounces off the ionosphere and can move around the world. And so people right now all over the world are hearing my voice. HAARP is the same way. And it can be focused by transmitting with certain frequencies in certain directions and certain polarizations. It can be focused on a given area. And what does it do? It can change the state of the ionosphere. It can also interact with metallic particles in the air, etc. There's all kinds of experiments that have been done